Thank you for this.
Of
I'm
course.
genuinely so excited. And I'm wondering if you could just sort of introduce yourself and tell us your title first.
Sure. My name is Sarah Herrlinger, and I am the Senior Director of Global Accessibility Policy and Initiatives here at Apple.
Awesome. I'm curious just to start, like, sort of what led you to this role specifically?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I am kind of a lifer here at Apple. I'm going on my 20th year.
Wow.
Or actually, I'm about to hit, I'll hit 20 now. And I started off in the accessibility realm in education, and I was really passionate about trying to figure out how we could help students with disabilities not just survive in education, but be able to thrive. And I realized how much our technology could do, and so I just worked to try and get the word out and to get into as many schools as I could to talk about what we were doing and make sure that students were getting the most out of their technology.
So I know that, like, one of the things I've always loved about Apple is you guys have been really focusing on accessibility since like 1985.
Yes.
Which is, I think, is so cool. And I'm curious, like, if you could give us a little bit of the process of how does Apple engage with the disability community, specifically when you're coming up with new accessibility features for devices, and then we'll talk about the Vision Pro at some point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the real baseline of it is adhering to the disability mantra of nothing about us without us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so important in everything we do, and that starts with employing people with disabilities within our own ranks. Some of that is within the accessibility team, having people who are daily users of this technology who can be the ones who say, gosh, I love that it does this, but I really wish it could also do that, or kind of helping us make it better. But then it's also the fact that by building this, we can have people in every department at Apple who are using these technologies. And then also going outside of our own ranks and working with individuals and organizations around the globe, so that when we are coming up with something that's completely brand new, and maybe we would say, we want a bigger population with which to discuss this, we can go find people and make sure that we are really building with and not for.
Oh, I love that. I'm also curious, over the last, few years, specifically with the launch of so many like gestures and so many things, is there something that like you've learned for the first time that you're like, oh wow, I didn't know this before through this work?
I don't know that there's like one specific thing so much as I think, going back to the engagement, we're never going to be able to come up with something that's really, what we want it to be if we don't engage the communities and we don't, really run things past people. So for me, I think that's always been the biggest, maybe, I wouldn't call it the initial aha, because I think even when I started, I saw how much the communities were active in their own, efforts to make technology better. But really just time after time, it becomes apparent that you learn so much when you're engaging with users.
I think that's one of the lovely things that I found the first time I purchased an Apple Watch. I was like, I feel so seen. Like the fact, I never thought it was an option for me. And when I saw that there was the wheelchair option, I was like, this is the first time where someone actually clearly thought about us, engaged with the community, and then provided something that actually works.
Yeah. Well, and I think a piece of that is because for us, and you alluded to the fact that our first Office of Disability started in 1985. We've had 40 years of having accessibility as a part of our culture.
Yeah.
And so accessibility isn't something that's bolted on at the end of a project. It's really something that as things are even ideas, before they're even in physical form, our team is in there talking about what are all the alternative use cases. So when you think about something like wheelchair workouts, it really comes out of our team saying, wow, we have this amazing wearable that's doing these kinds of things in certain communities. What if we did this? And then so cool. Engagement.
And I think that's such a beautiful example of universal design, right? And what's good for one person is good for everybody.
Yep.
If you make those sort of things accessible. That's awesome. I'm curious now about the Vision Pro, and can you give us a few examples? I got the opportunity to try it out a couple weeks ago.
Oh, good.
And it felt like it was designed for disabled people, honestly. I don't know if that's actually the case, but can you talk a little bit about it and some of the features specifically around accessibility?
Sure, yeah. And again, this is one of those great examples of a team engaging right from the start. And so I like to think it was built for people with disabilities, right? And everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think often, when you build for the margins, you make better products for everyone.
Yes,
so
yes.
it's a great way of doing design. But so right from the start, we started looking at, with our long history of accessibility and so many other products, what are some of the features that people know and love and rely on in other areas? And so we were able to work on porting dozens of the accessibility features that people use elsewhere, whether that's things like voiceover, Zoom, switch control, all kinds of things that were really foundational to people's usage, and bring them over, but really to try and reimagine them in this new spatial computing world. So there's tons of things that are in there, but on top of that, we layered on the fact that we knew with spatial computing, it's a whole different way to interact. And so we tried to look at how much the sort of multimodality of this device could be beneficial. And so, you can run the device using your voice, you can run it using eye tracking, you can run it using gestures, you can use a keyboard, all these different things, and you can transition from one to the next fairly seamlessly. So if you're someone for whom early on in the day you're using gestures, but you may tire out and want to move to voice, it's an easy transition for you to do. So I think as we've built it, it's both foundational accessibility features, but it's also just trying to rethink the whole accessibility of the device itself.
Maybe it's too early for this, so please let me know. But do you have an example of someone that it's changed their life, or someone with a disability that used it was like, oh my gosh, it's opened up a whole new world for me?
Yeah. Well, we get in a lot of feedback, whether it be through consumers that go into stores or people who write into us and things like that. And I think rather than a very specific example, what we saw was more than anything just a consistent drumbeat of people in the disability world saying kind of what you said. I feel seen. I feel like you made this for me. And in particular, I think for individuals with upper body mobility concerns, to be able to use voice or to use eye gaze and things, and just having alternative ways to drive a device has been great.
Yeah. And again, I think it's a good example of we have the ability to make technology and things in our society for everyone.
Yes.
It's whether we choose to or not that is the question.
Yep. Absolutely.
So just before we sort of wrap up, I'm curious, is there anything that you wish people would know about accessibility from Apple, or something that people don't know that you think they should?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just go into the accessibility settings and check it out. Even for people who don't self-identify as having a disability, there's so many of our accessibility features that are just, in some ways, amazing life hacks. And I think people kind of, in many cases, may open up all the other parts of settings, but think, oh, maybe this is for someone else. And they don't realize that the technology they've been carrying around in their pocket for the last decade is the most accessible technology on the planet.
Yeah.
So I just always want people to go and open it up and try a few things in there. And I would say, hands down, I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't go in and turn something on and keep that on in perpetuity, because they'll find something that makes them more productive in their daily lives. And so, just get in there.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this. Thank you for all the work that you and the rest of the folks at Apple are doing for accessibility. And thank you for making me feel seen.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course. It's a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.